This is Kudzu Creative with a quick video on a very specific type of marketing campaign you'd only use when you have super qualified C-level prospects who you know your offering is perfect for, but you either can't get past the gatekeeper or you can't get their attention to secure a meeting. We call these campaigns executive door openers. So the nut of these two-part campaigns is essentially that the prospect receives an invitation to a sales call or an event you want them to attend, along with a small but high-end promotional item. And the invitation lets them know that when they have the meeting or attend the event, they'll receive a much larger related promotional item. In the early 2000s, these often took the form of executives receiving invitations that came with a remote control, for example, but the larger item, the robot or vehicle controlled by the remote, was presented at the sales call or event. The big deal about these campaigns, of course, is that while they do carry a significant per unit cost, they're only used with very high-level decision makers, and the response rates are often into the mid-30% range, which is pretty much unheard of in terms of any kind of marketing campaign. So against that backdrop, we'll dive into this particular executive door opener, or EDO, concept put together for an Atlanta-based company called ControlScan, which offers a set of technology solutions designed to ensure security, compliance, and ultimately market differentiation for financial services companies involved in credit card transactions. In this case, ControlScan was preparing for a large industry event at which they had secured an executive suite in which they wanted to host an event that would allow C-level thought leaders to come together, talk about the issues that are relevant in their world, and also provide the opportunity for a bit of networking where sales would have access to these high-level folks. So what you see here in this first slide are the main elements of the campaign: the invitation and RSVP card, along with the smaller promotional item, in this case a pair of high-end lead crystal whiskey glasses, and the larger promotion, a very highly rated bottle of whiskey. But that's really just the beginning in terms of the very tightly integrated way this campaign has been developed, so let's take a bit of a deeper dive. And here you see the glass and the invitation in isolation, and can begin to see some of the copy and design detail that are likely to pique the curiosity of even C-level prospects. So from a design perspective, the invitation and envelope stock and printing are very high-end, and you'll notice on the invitation that the background border image that matches with the envelope is a very masculine Scotch tartan. No offense to the ladies, but the target group will be almost exclusively male, so this is totally appropriate. Then you can see some of the design elements and fonts that almost give the impression of a vintage whiskey bottle label, including a kind of vintage stamp, if you will, that simply has the company name and event date. And here you see that element carried over into the sticker that seals the envelope, but more integrated still is the copy itself, which reads in part, "You didn't get where you are in the world of finance thinking the glass was half empty," and then goes on to say, "We'll ensure your glass is brimming with a bottle of Booker's 25th anniversary bourbon whiskey, batch 2014-1. Incidentally, this is the top-rated whiskey for the summer of 2014, which is also noted on the invitation." So now we've set the stage for how the promotional items are tied into the invitation, and the invitation goes on to say, "Please accept this gift to you as you join peers and fellow thought leaders at the Aria Hotel's Executive Suite 3 for a discussion of technologies that drive security, compliance, and market differentiation in today's financial marketplace. Whiskey tasting to follow." We then see the evening's agenda clearly broken into two parts, the first from 6:30 to 8 being an industry discussion and presentation of the bottles of this top-rated whiskey to thought leaders in attendance, and then from 8 to 9, a whiskey tasting. Lastly, I'll draw your attention to the RSVP section, which indicates that you can RSVP via email, phone, or of course using the enclosed card, much as you would find in a wedding or other high-end social invitation. So now we'll move on to the RSVP card, which you see here to the right with standard accepts with pleasure or declines with regrets verbiage, but then also notice the quote at the base of the card, which is essentially a vintage quote on the topic of whiskey, in this case from Jimmy Stewart, that actually comes from one of my favorite movies. But what happened when we began to research famous whiskey quotes was that we found all kinds of famous men's men, from literary to historical icons, and their quotes were just unbelievable. So we decided to add another card of the same size as the RSVP, but behind the RSVP. And this card, seen to the left, served two purposes. With its amazing vintage whiskey quotes, the cards tie the theme together among the campaign elements extremely tightly and also add an air of almost elitist sophistication to the effect it has on the person it's directed to. And while this might not be popular in populist circles, it's probably dead on in terms of setting the precise tone you want when targeting C-level prospects. But interestingly, the other thing this card does is allow us an opportunity to address one of the main objections executives have when you invite them to a function. They want to know who else is coming, and this can be tricky before you have a solid core of confirmed attendees. So this card begins by saying, "Also in attendance will be the strongest among your industry peers," followed by a play on words linking strongest to the proof or strength of the whiskey, which is of course very high, and then says, as a lead-in to the quote, "Also with you in spirit, take taking advantage of the double meaning of that word, followed by another ellipsis, and references to each of the vintage men's men with their quotes, beginning with Mark Twain and ending with Dylan Thomas. This all ties together so nicely. I think irrespective of your position in an organization, you'd really have to applaud how all these things are linked together so seamlessly and cleverly. Which brings us to the stamps of all things that adorn the RSVP card envelopes. Unbelievably, there actually are Mark Twain stamps. Here you also see O. Henry, who also had a great whiskey quote but didn't manage to make our top 5 list, so we went with the Twain stamps. A really nice flourish added to a really detail-oriented and cleverly crafted campaign that hits precisely the right tone and depth and degree of sophistication for this very high-level audience. So just a couple of additional thoughts on these campaigns. The first is obvious. They cost some money, so there's no question this is a one-to-one effort that only makes sense if you have absolutely qualified the heck out of the individuals targeted. The second thing is, while you really need to be putting high-end pieces in front of these folks based on their executive positions, you're really probably never going to be offering them something they think is so cool they just have to confirm the meeting or event you want them to attend. That's just probably not going to happen with most of these people who can buy whatever they want in the first place, so the trick is to make the promotions you choose at a high enough level for them, and maybe make them something they could re-gift or display. This covers anything from technology gadgets to collector's edition wines. But with that said, once you have a promotional combination that's high level enough but doesn't break your bank, the real key is piquing their curiosity. You're going to achieve this with campaigns like this one, where the level of etiquette, sophistication, and cleverness, and perhaps most especially attention to detail, are all front and center. And needless to say, getting something like this in front of a prospect not only represents your company insanely well and is likely to achieve the desired response, I wonder who these folks are, I'm going to find out a little bit more about them, but it also cuts through the huge and constant barrage of marketing noise they're confronted with every day. This campaign will get you more face time than virtually any other kind of marketing out there, and for well-qualified decision makers, it's unquestionably worth the investment. So as always, apologies for the length on this video, but thanks for hanging in there with us. These are a few of the great technology companies we've provided work to. We'd love to include you in the mix. Thanks so much for tuning in.